Hey everybody, and good afternoon. This is Donna Potter, and I'm glad that you could join us here today for the Kentucky Adult Ed ESL Assessment System webinar. And what we're going to be talking about today is the transition from BEST Literacy and BEST Plus to CASAS. So obviously the presenters today are going to be myself, Donna Potter, and I'm Kentucky Adult Ed Senior Associate in Instructional Leadership. And I will have this posted at the end, but you can see it on the slide that my email address is donna.potter, P-O-T-T-E-R, at KYAE.gov. We also have Patricia Lovett, who's going to give you a little bit of information about herself in just a minute. And we also have Celeste Goodwin, and Celeste is our National Certified CASAS Trainer. So if you were to call out in California and San Diego and you call CASAS and say that you need help, they would say, well, you're honored to have a National Certified CASAS trainer there in Kentucky. So we're very fortunate in being able to have Celeste. And Patricia Lovett, I'd love for you to tell them a little bit about yourself.
Sure, thanks, Donna. Hi, everyone. This is Patricia Lovett. I am a team leader for family learning at the National Center for Families Learning, which is located in Louisville, Kentucky. I know many of you, your names are familiar to me because you have been in professional development with me before. And CFL is very honored to have a contract providing professional development for Kentucky adult education, and I look forward to continuing to work with you as you implement CASAS. Thank you.
Thank you, Patricia. And if you haven't had the opportunity to attend one of Patricia's training, I would definitely encourage you to do so. And also, as Tony Quire said earlier, that if you have questions during the presentations at the different slides, which I'm sure that you will, we're going to try to answer as many questions as possible. We may get to the point that there's too many and we may need to address them at the end. But as Tony said, we will definitely we'll definitely try to address every question that you all ask. And once again, a reminder about please have your phone on mute so that we do not have background noise because we are recording this webinar. So I'm going to go ahead and start the presentation with on the next page, on the next slide, we're going to talk about the ESL assessment policy change. And one thing I'm pretty sure that everybody should be aware of, that on page 17 of the policy manual, we have sent out numerous notices about Kentucky we will recognize BEST Literacy and BEST Plus only until June 30th. And then once June 30th is over, we're going to switch to CASAS. So again, I want you to be very aware that, again, we're going to recognize them only until June 30th, 2016. That's the end of our fiscal year, and you need to be, and then one of the reasons why that we're having this webinar and we keep sending emails is that we would like for everybody to go ahead and become familiar with the CASAS system before July 1, and instead of having July 1 creep up, then suddenly you're in a panic, because we'll no longer accept those assessments as for any type of games. You're going to need to switch over by July 1. And again, Celeste will tell you this. She'll remind you of this, as well as Patricia's going to talk a little bit more about this at the end of the PowerPoint. That you have to, in order for you to order any CASAS material, you have to complete the CASAS implementation training. And if you see there on the screen, on the PowerPoint, You can see the web address, and you cannot purchase any CASAS items until this training has been completed. So again, we'll talk a little bit more about that at the end of the webinar, and I am turning this over to Celeste Goodwin, who is our National Certified CASAS Trainer. Hi, Celeste.
Hi, everyone. How are you? I'm glad you're joining us here today. So what I'm going to be talking about is the transition from the best to what you hopefully will consider the better. So again, we want to make sure that you've done your implementation training, because you have to do that before you can purchase the materials. But my goal today is to give you a brief overview of the actual assessment system, and then to talk about some great resources like something called Quick Search. So I'm making an assumption that everyone speaks TABE, so I'm trying to draw parallels because the test is more structured like the TABE than the BEST test. So that's where I'm making my comparisons. As we start, we have something called the appraisal, and the appraisal is the equivalent of the locator in the TABE, and it's not for enrollment purposes. It's just to say which one is the correct test. There's a reading appraisal, and then there's also a listening appraisal. The reading test has 5 levels, again similar to the TABE, with 2 forms at each level, so there's a total of 10 basic forms, and then there's an X series that would make 11 different test forms. There's a literacy level, and then there's A, B, C, and D. And so A is the second lowest, and then D is the highest level. So it goes in an alphabetic order. So the literacy level, A, B, C, and D, with D is the highest. The listening level, the listening test only has 3 levels, and so C is the highest level for that one. And then the competencies, which are my favorite part of the CASAS system, are these measurable objectives that really are super helpful for guiding instruction, and we'll talk about how the competencies work in a few minutes. So when you're ordering, and there was an attachment that went out with recommendations of what to order, you need to get the appraisal, which is the Form 80, and so there are several different test series, so you need to make sure that you get the right one. The one that Kentucky has approved for ESL is the Life and Work Assessment Series. So the appraisal Form 80 has both the reading and listening component, and then within the reading, you have a literacy level. The literacy level, Form 27 and 28, are actually consumables that students write in. And if you have students from non-Roman alphabets, I would recommend that you get this. If most of your students are people who have the same alphabet in their first language, then you should be fine to get just starting with the level A. So that's something else to consider, and that's notated in the recommendations. So you have your literacy level, Form 27 and Form 28, and then level A, 81 and 82, and then B, 83, 84. Now there is, between level A and B, an X level, which just basically means extended, so there would be an 81X and an 82X. And then level C, the numbers shift to 185, 186, and then level D, 187, 188. For the listening, you need to be very careful because the listening series has a level, forms 981, 982, 983, 984, 985, 96, but there's also just an 80 series. So you need to be very careful about that when you're ordering, because the 980 series is approved, but the 80 series is not. So please be careful with that. Other things to think about is that the test administration manual must be purchased separately. It's not included with your buy, but it's not just the answer key. It has all the reports, the manual reports included with it. We talked about the Forms 81 and 82. They're useful, and if you buy the entire set, they're included in that. And then there is a Form 85 and 86. So if we go back a second to look, so there's a shift in this 185, 186, but there is a Form 85, 86. Oops, sorry. And those, when they were created and vetted through CASAS, they determined that they were like 75% work and 25% life. So they don't recommend that you use those, and they must be purchased separately. So for ESL, they're not useful. If you do some kind of work focus, again, they're the next to highest level test. So if you have higher functioning ESL students that are really trying to prep for employment, you might consider purchasing those, but they're not included when you buy the set, but they can be purchased separately. So that's the system. Again, we'll go back for just a second. So there's 5 levels of the reading and then 3 levels of the listening. You can choose either type. So here in Jefferson, we just use the reading test. So you may prefer to do the listening, you may prefer to do the reading, or you may prefer to do a combination. That's going to be a programmatic decision. KYAE has also approved a reading for citizenship. This is NRS approved, so KYAE will accept this. Again, it's only for the A level, which is going to be your level 7, level 8 students on your NRS 7s and 8s. And so I would be cautionary in using this exclusively because it is not going to get you good performance. It's a helpful tool if you're teaching citizenship classes, but probably not really good for core funding, performance, and upgrades. Okay. So generally speaking, the assessment process is pretty basic. You start out with an appraisal, then you have a pre-test, then you do instruction, then you have a post-test, and then that cycles more instruction, more post-test, more instruction, post-test. And to get your scale score, again, you just have the raw score, which is the number correct, and it's a basic fundamental scale. And then you have just the numbers there, so that's pretty self-explanatory. E-tests, let's talk a little bit about e-tests. E-test does this thing automatically, and so there are some advantages to using the e-test. So if your organization is doing everything online, then you would want to maybe keep the same kind of thing for your ESL students. So you can get e-tests. What you would have to do is call CASAS directly to get pricing because they price per test administration. And so that's something that you would have to, because it depends on how many you buy, what the price is. So that's not anything that we can help you with. You would have to talk directly to them and to make sure you have all the systematic need, computer system requirements to make that work effectively. So the e-tests are really great because they're computer adaptive and the locator's built in, so you don't have to pay for that extra. So, and then it automatically tells you which one to give for the next test. So the e-tests are helpful if that's going to be the best fit for your organization.
Celeste, do you see the question from Elizabeth Gray? She's written down in the box, and it says, she said, I have a TAM, which I'm a training manual from 2005. Is it advisable to get a new manual or only if we are adding listening and citizenship tests? We are adding listening and citizenship tests. Sorry about that.
So, yes, I saw the question. I was getting there.
Sorry.
So the TAM, if the TAM that you have is for the Life and Work series, it should be the same. You will have to get a separate TAM for the listening because it has a listening, there is a separate TAM for the listening series. The citizenship does not have a TAM. It has what they call a TAD. It's a Test Administration Direction, and it's free when you buy the citizenship test. So, but yeah, if you have a Life and Work TAM, it should be the same for the reading, but you would have to buy a separate one for the listening. Okay? And as we move forward to looking, one of the things that I think you will find very great about CASAS is that there is one universal scale and there are not out-of-range scores. What CASAS has done has built this one scale, and then each test form targets a specific range within that scale. So when you're looking for performance, you need to be mindful of what the range is and where they top out and how they overlap, so that's important. But it's really useful because there's not any out-of-range scores. The timing, as you're looking at the appraisal is going to be about 25 minutes. The appraisal for the listening times itself. The reading tests are at 1 hour for the pre and 1 hour for the post, and then, of course, the listening tests time themselves, and the e-tests time themselves as well. This is super important. You want to be very careful about test security, making sure that neither staff nor students photograph or take pictures or copy elements from the tests themselves or target specific vocabulary as they're taking the test. So you want to make sure that everybody is maintaining the test security. The CASAS competencies are, in my opinion, the best part of CASAS because they are your key to successful ESL instruction, whether you use the CASAS test or not. If you're using it, then it's more helpful, but even if you don't use it, the CASAS competencies have always been a great support. They are meant to be measurable, life skill kinds of targets for instruction, and they are just amazingly helpful. This is an example of a competency. It's take or interpret telephone, and the word messages has been left off, so I apologize for that. Take or interpret telephone messages. And this is an example of how, from a testing perspective as well as an instructional perspective, when you look at a level A, you see the display is very white space. It's just Sarah, Dana's coming today at 11. And then you have just the basic question, who is coming? So you're doing basic reading where you're looking for a replacement, you're scanning for is coming, and it's a very basic reading skill because that's what a level A test looks like. Many displays have just very few words and a lot of white space. Then with the same competency, you have your standard pink sheet, which is not pink here, but the while you are out form that is much more complicated display. And then for the level B question, you have, again, when. So you're looking for when does the caller want to meet. And then you have 3 out of the 4 options are focused on when, but you have to distinguish what is the appropriate one. So that's not only reading, that is thinking in a critical way. But the C level takes it to a different level of critical analysis because it's what should be done with this message. And then you have this almost comical, Paula should give it to Mr. Harper should give it to Lisa should give it to Mr. Harper, Paula should give it to Lisa. So it's a who's on first, what's on third, and all these different kinds of things where you're like, I don't know what to do with this thing. So this is where the critical thinking and the analysis blends with the reading and the work skills and all of those things. So it's a really great example of how the competencies are tested, so you can see how they're tested in different ways according to the different levels, but it's also a really good tip about how to handle them instructionally. So I really like this. As we talk about the CASAS competencies have 9 content areas. So when you are getting to know the competencies, you're going to learn that they have 3 numbers. And those 3 numbers are, you need to kind of learn what the code is. So we're going to crack the code about them. 0 is basic communication, 1 is consumer economics, 2 is community resources, 3 is health, and 4 is employment. So 0 to 4 are the ones that you need to be involved in every single day because that's your basic ESL instruction. As we get into government and law, particularly if you're headed for citizenship, those are helpful. The math is marginally useful in the ESL environment, but don't discount the 7 and 8, because the 7 and 8 are things to remind you about how to incorporate critical thinking with the learning and thinking skills. And then the 8, the independent living, CASAS has a series that's targeting people with mental disabilities. And so these are things that they have developed for the success of living independently for those students. But if you look at them from a cultural perspective about what are the, quote, normal expectations in this country about things like hygiene, how we cook things, what our expectations are for everyday cleanliness, that's something to look at in that category. So I just want to make sure that you look through. I mean, again, there's 300 of them. It's 10 pages, 2 columns, fine print. But they all have some value within our ESL environment. So the content area, and then the next one becomes the competency area, and then the actual third number is competency statement, which is the actual measurable objective. One other thing to remember is that they don't have to be taught in order. So you do not have to start with number 1 and cover all the number 1 items before you move to number 2. So they are not in that way sequential at all. There is also a 4th number that you can find that's a task area. And so, again, this is helpful both from an instructional perspective as well as a performance perspective, because you can look to see how the actual question was asked without compromising the integrity of the test, because the reports tell you which one of these items are used. So you can find out, was it a measurement scale, was it a fill in the blank, was it a map? So you can look at these things to see what kind of displays, because sometimes the student may understand the content, but they may not be understanding how the question is being asked. So that's another tool that you have, and then of course you have your listening prompts, especially like the predict the next line of a dialogue. You know, prediction and trying to anticipate what the next one is a very different concept than just understanding what is being said to you. So again, understanding how the questions are being asked is important for both the students and your instruction. So here is an example. This is in your TAM, and it's called a class profile, which is a little bit of a misnomer because it's making an assumption that the people in your class will all have taken the same test form. So that's not true. So you need to look at the test form. So you would put all the students who had taken test form 83, and you would put their names on here. And this is a gap analysis where you put a plus sign for all the questions that they got correct, and then you can see the gaps. Now, if you want to do it the other way, you can, but this is just the way that they recommend it so that you can identify where the main gaps are in the class at a quick glance. And you will see that for each question, they have the exact competency that was tested. So you can see that the first one, the narrative, is a 0.2.1, and we know that 0 is basic communication. And then 7.2.1, again, 7 is the learning and thinking skills. And then at the very end, there's a little T with an asterisk, and then it's got the number 3. So you would know that that's the third task area, which if we go back, that's going to be a story, article, paragraph, sentence, direction, or picture. And so because it's narrative, you know that it was probably some kind of paragraph. So once you get these numbers in your mind and you learn to speak the language, it really does facilitate your instruction, and they're super helpful. And the last thing I want to talk about is if you go to CASAS.org, you will create an account, and then you have access to Quick Search Online. Quick Search Online is a great source because it has all these, it's a database of commercial items, but it also has websites and games, and it has all these wonderful things that you can look through to help. So if you say, I want to teach 2.2.1, then you could go to the community resources and pick 2.2.1 and click on it, and then it's going to give you a list of resources. You could also even be more specific to say, I want something only appropriate for ESL, or I want something only for a B-level student, or I want something that's only a website. And so this is an amazing instructional resource. And it's free. All you have to do is go to the website to create an account. And that's pretty much all I have to say. Thank you.
Oh, great. Thank you. Thank you, Celeste. Now we're going to talk about those of you that haven't had the opportunity to take the implementation training. Patricia Lovett's going to talk a little bit about that. Patricia?
Hi again. So just to ensure that everyone is clear, before you can order any of the materials, the person who is ordering materials for testing must have taken the CASAS implementation training. And that is available. It's a self-paced course available through CASAS, but you must register through Angel with Kentucky Adult Education, and the information is here kind of guiding you how you will actually complete that training then on the CASAS website. Are there any questions particular to that implementation training? It really is completely self-paced, and you move through as you're going. Certainly, if you have questions as you're doing that, you would be able to direct those to Celeste or to myself, and we could help you out. I know once in a while people will have a challenge with the quiz at the end, but if you have questions, you're more than welcome to check in with either of us.
And also, thank you, Patricia, and once you do complete this training, they will issue you a certificate, and you need to be sure to notify me that you've received the certificate, and that way I can give you credit for that, for completing that for your PD. So be sure that that you do, once you complete that that course, that you do need to send that completion to me. And yeah, occasionally though some people will reach a snag in the quiz, but again, you've got plenty of help here. So here, on a state level, so we'll do everything we can to support you. Okay, Celeste, you want to? I see we have. I see that we have a question. So if you could go ahead and address that, and we'll kind of wind up unless we have some more questions.
So our last slide is just some basic contact information. Again, if you have questions about the e-test or what that price point would be, you can call and talk to them directly. Mary just asked about, once you've taken the CASAS implementation training, do you have to keep doing it? No. So there's not like a constant refresher. If there's a new series or something shifts, then it would probably be good. But if you've taken it with the Life and Work series in the last 5 or 6 years, then you're good to go. And that's, unless the system actually changes, then they don't need that. So one and done.
Thank you. And then our last slide with the CASAS contact information.
Yeah, I just talked about that.
Oh, sorry. Sorry about that. Okay. Anybody have any other questions? Well, I thank you all for joining us. And again, if we can be of any assistance, please don't hesitate to send an email to me, Donna.Potter at KYAE.gov, or, and then I can direct those questions and assistance.
Hi.
Hi.
we were wondering if you had CASAS training previously, is that still valid?
Yes. Did you have it under the Life and Work series, or did you have it under the Life Skills series?
The life skills.
Then you probably, the concept is similar, but you probably need to get, just to go back through it, just to have the numbers and understand the new numbering system.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, it's basically the same, but if you haven't done it under Life and Work series, I would recommend that you do it just to get a refresher with it. They don't require a refresher, but if it's Life Skills, that's been a while back, and if you haven't used it at all since Life Skills, then I would, just for your own personal betterment, I would encourage you to take it.
All right, thank you.
It's not that big of a deal, so it's fine.
Yeah. Okay.
And half of the slides I showed you are from the implementation training, so you're halfway done.
Cool. Thank you.
All right, any other questions? One thing I would, some of you, we don't have your name listed. We have your phone numbers listed. So I think we'll be able to check you off on our list of people that enrolled, however, to take the webinar. So anyway, again, great talking to you. Thanks for joining us, and I'm sure I'll be hearing from you all soon. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye.